Hello, and you are listening to Bill Murphy's Red Zone podcast. If you are listening for the first time, I interview leaders who inspire me in the areas of hardcore IT security, IT business leadership, innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship, and fearless living principles. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is Bill Murphy, your host of the Red Zone podcast. I am very excited about my guest for today. His name is Shola Oyewole. He's the CIO of United Therapeutics. I met Shola over 16 years ago when United Therapeutics was just in its infancy. And I think Shola, it was about 30 people on the staff at that point. And now there are over 800 people around the world. And Shola has had a meteoric rise to the top, really staying at the top from the infancy all the way through. And what's really fascinating about Shola is he's immigrated to the US from Nigeria, and he's been a part of the senior executive leadership team of United Therapeutics from day one. And what's so exciting about Shola is that he's playing the CIO game from both offense and defense. He actively participates in the revenue generation side of the fence and helping support and actually using his talents to support offensive efforts as well as defense as well. So you're going to learn from both sides his story about, well, let's go through some of the things you're going to learn from today. You're going to learn from the importance of continuous learning, not just in the technical domain, but in the leadership, innovation, and team building. Shola is constantly attending conferences, learning, networking with peers, vendors. He is completely engaged in this. And this is supported from the top. And he talks about how important continuous learning is, the importance of mentors. He talks about some early mentors that made a huge difference in his career, in his life. And as I mentioned to you, some of the things are so interesting. He has innovated on the help desk, some really creative ideas on the help desk that'll really spark your imagination. And it got me really fired up hearing his stories. And those actually dovetail really cleanly with branding and marketing. If you met Shola, you'll see that he's very, very aware of the branding and marketing impact of his department. He was one of the first to go into the cloud, period, in the Mid-Atlantic area. And you can see how he's branded his IT department and how he provides service and services to his business units. And I did put a logo that was developed for his team on the show notes page at redzonetech.net/podcasts. Again, redzonetech.net/podcast. And you can see the Shola episode and just scroll down. You can see the show notes. I put an example of his logo that he's branded the department with. And there's some really interesting stories that he shares regarding branding. And then also what I find is super important is stories of how Shola said yes to the CEO's most impossible requests, and how those led to really interesting revenue sources for the company. The CEO is really plugged into exponential technologies, and as a biomanufacturing company, they are certainly participating in the accelerating growth of bioinformatics in health changes. And you'll see that with Shola and how he said yes to something that hadn't been done before and was technically impossible, but how he and his team figured out a way, and how that has added not only to his credibility in the organization, but to significant sources of revenue for the organization. So there's Shola. And there's no sponsor for today's episode, but I want to highlight for you that I'd like to hear from you. So, my cell number is 410-320-6433. 410-320-6433. Text me, call me, let me know what you think of the show. What has inspired you? What are some people that I need to be interviewing moving forward that that I don't, either in enterprise IT security, CIOs that I need to be aware of, exponential technologies, innovation, frontiers of human performance, whatever it may be, let me know. You can also find me on Twitter at EXOIT Leader. Again, that's EXOIT Leader. And it can be the Sahara Desert without feedback from you. So step out of the shadows and engage with me. And thanks again for listening to this show. I appreciate your attention very, very much. And I know you're going to like this discussion that I have with Shola. Have a great day. Shola, I want to welcome you to the show today.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
So this is a lot of fun because we go back now, probably close to 15 years. And
at least 15 years, yeah.
And you have been, the company you work for, United Therapeutics, and I know everybody's just listened to the intro that I've given about your bio, your official bio, but I don't think people really understand, when you started here, how many employees were in the company?
I would say I started working here in 2000, and the company had recently gone public. So there are probably about 30 employees then. We have over 700 employees today.
30 to 700.
Yeah.
That's a huge growth.
It is astronomical, correct.
Well, and I'm super proud that I've known you the whole time.
Yes.
But let's even go before that. So let's talk about, to give some people some context. So where were you born?
I was born in Nigeria, in a city called Lagos.
Lagos, okay.
Yes. And I moved to America in 1987 to pursue a master's degree in information technology at the American University. And that was when I moved to America officially in 87.
And so what was it like growing up in Lagos? Am I pronouncing it right? Lagos?
Lagos,
okay.
Lagos is kind of like the New York City of Nigeria. That is where everything happened. Business deals, advancement in everything, finance, technology, and all those things. Growing up in Lagos is very, very fast-paced. And I was kind of a teenager in those days anyway, so I cannot say I was able to truly enjoy the tech or finance part of things, but it was fun growing in Lagos. I love going back. I travel back to Lagos every year, and it is always a fun, very, very active place. So it's like New York City.
Do you remember when you got to your first computer? Do you remember the genesis of it all?
My first computer, yes. It was an Amstrad 64.
Amstrad?
Amstrad, Amstrad. They're no more obviously in business. This is about, 20-something years ago. I had purchased it on a trip I'd made to London. Amstrad was a company then, an electronics company. And my first degree in Nigeria was in electronics engineering.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I minored in computer sciences. And I was given a choice, an elective, and I chose programming. So I programmed in BASIC. And the only computer we had in our lab then was an Apple II.
Okay.
With an external tape drive. Now, that was huge. That was big. And my first project was to write an inventory control system.
Oh, okay.
Which I did using BASIC. So I learned BASIC on my own. I programmed it and I wrote an application, and I was very, very excited. And that summer when I went to London, I thought I'd buy my own computer. I couldn't afford an Apple II or Apple IIe. But there was this company, an electronics game company called Amstrad, and they sold computers for roughly £400.
Okay.
In color, or £300 black and white. So I bought the £300 black and white version. It came with some very basic games, and it came with obviously operating system.
The basic operating
and basic, yeah.
Approximately when was that?
That was in 85, I think.
85, okay.
1985, yeah. And I brought that back to Nigeria, and I wrote a lot of software in BASIC. And by the way, this computer was more advanced than the Apple II because it had a built-in disk drive.
Oh.
So, it had a tape drive, which I did not need because it had a built-in disk drive. So my programs were able to load faster, and all that good stuff. And then I later bought a printer, a dot matrix printer, so I could print out all my code. Because in those days, if you lost your floppy, if you lost your drive, or if it crashes, that was it. So that was my very first computer, the Amstrad 64, 128, I think. Amstrad 128.
So what made you want to come to the US? Like, what was the genesis of that? You wrote your programs, you were programming, you got your degree in electrical engineering. And what was the spark that said, I need to come to the US?
Well, so I come from a very long line of educators. My parents they're educators. They have been all their lives. And it is very natural for me, my siblings, members of my family, to pursue a master's degree. And my siblings have gone to different places to pursue theirs, some in England, some in America. At that time, my older brother, Bayo, lived in America. He worked at the World Bank. And as would happen, right, typically you go where you have a relative.
Okay.
And you pursue further degree there. So like if he lived in Russia, I would have gone to Russia.
Okay.
If he lived in Poland, I'd have gone to Poland. But he lived in America, in Washington, D.C. He works at the World Bank. And I said, you know what? I'm done with my degree in Nigeria, bio. I'd like to pursue a master's degree. He's like, okay, come on up. So I packed my stuff. Everything fit in one suitcase. And I showed up in Dulles Airport. He picked me up.
Wow.
And within 7 days, I was enrolled at the American University.
Within 7 days. But were you just being a student 100% of the time, or did you work part-time?
In Nigeria, you could be a full-time student, eat, drink, live in your parents' home for free.
Okay.
However, in America, everybody has to work. I did not know that.
Oh.
So I arrived here on a Friday, and by Saturday, I'd found a part-time job delivering newspapers.
Okay.
At 2 a.m.
At 2 a.m, yes.
Till 8 a.m. It was a rude awakening.
Now, what year approximately was this? Was this in the 90s, early 90s?
This was in 1987.
87. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So within a few days, I was delivering newspapers in a car we had purchased from a gas station fella. He had a sign, $900 or better. And we went up to him. We negotiated down the price. He said he'll take cash. We went to 2 ATM machines because in those days, the limit was $400 per ATM machine. My brother went to one ATM, withdrew $400. His wife went to another, withdrew $400. And for $800, I bought my first car in America, a Rabbit.
Yeah. Oh, right. The Volkswagen Rabbit.
50,000 miles on it. That car was almost dead. But let me tell you something. After I drove it for 1 year delivering newspapers, it truly died.
Yeah, I think I told you that I delivered newspapers as well, roughly that same time frame when I get out of college, just to pay bills. And I was delivering papers from 2 till 7 in the morning, and then going to my day job right after that.
Oh, you had a day job?
And a day job. Yeah, because I'd started a couple of businesses, and this was early on, before people say that it takes you 3 or 4 businesses to figure out that, how to make them work. So these were definitely on the failed businesses. And so I was using the paper route to basically pay down expenses. And
Really?
So, yeah, I mean, because you could make $4,000 a month just delivering these. Maybe it wasn't 4,000 a month, but like 2,000 a month just delivering newspapers.
I don't know what newspaper you were delivering. My salary was $171 a week.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, for USA Today. And I was using the money to pay for my credits at American University, which are a couple $1,000s per course. By the time you pay for fuel, and mind you, it was a car that was on its last legs anyway, paid for service, paid for all that wear and tear. Thank God for credit cards. Because let me tell you something, Citibank sent me something in the mail. Then it was a $1,000 credit limit. That is how I financed my education.
Yeah.
Credit cards and carrying newspapers all the way.
Well, you've also gone on to further education as well. Didn't you go on to another degree a couple of years ago?
Yeah. About 15 years later, I attended the executive MBA program at GW.
Okay.
And that was probably 8-9 years ago that I graduated from that program. It's an accelerated, fast-paced MBA program. And it lasted about 18 months, a year and a half. It was kind of a nice capstone, It was a perfect education, especially after working almost 15 years in the industry. It's a nice way to go back and cap it all up. Prior to that, I'd taken a few Harvard Business School classes. They have week-long courses where you camp with other like-minded people. And I really recommend those courses. And then I think we spoke once about Singularity University, which I attended.
Right. You were the one who led me to Singularity.
Yes. That was an eye-opener. I highly recommend it for every person. It just makes you think big.
And you're going on to another conference just after our discussion today. So you seem like you very much appreciate and have it as a part of your DNA is continuous learning, whether it's getting a degree or whether it's just going to a conference to learn. Would that be true?
Correct. 100%. I am a learner. I learn all the time. I learn from everyone. I learn from everybody I meet. I learn from my daughter every day. The other day, she taught me an octopus had 3 hearts.
3 hearts?
I'm like, why? Why? Well, Dad, one is for thriving, one is for living, and one is for diving. I'm like, what do you need 3 hearts for? Well, one heart controls the left 4 legs.
Oh my.
The other one controls the right 4 legs. And then the 3rd heart just synchronizes it all.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, amazing. So I'm always learning, continuous learning. When I hire people, I encourage my staff to learn. I give them every opportunity to learn different things, new things, and things that are not germane to their discipline. It's got to be something different.
And why would you do that? Why would you ask them to learn something different outside of their discipline?
Because I find that people are better and well-rounded. I prefer to work with well-rounded people.
Okay.
Well-rounded people think outside the box, right? They don't solve problems the same way, okay? And they're not narrow-minded. It will not be unusual for you to find communications, graphic design in my department. I will show you a virtual reality studio that's just right outside my office. What has that got to do with IT? Nothing. However, think about learning. Think about how you're going to train doctors and scientists down the road. Are they going to keep cutting up cadavers to discover stuff? How about you give them VR goggles, put them in a VR environment where they can dissect harmlessly, as many times as they want. So I am always looking for tools and people that are not a part of the norm. So within my team now, I have communications, I have linguistic specialists, I have graphics artists, I have, all kinds of people. I have techies too.
Well, yeah, certainly, because you have a deep expertise in tech, and what I want people to understand is when you got started, you were the engineer at 30 employees, right?
Yeah, I was the IT department. I had a budget of $5,000 a month. So I had to choose, was I going to buy a printer or a laptop that month?
Well, and this company has experienced such profound growth and impact in this local region. It's now one of the major growth companies in the Washington, D.C. area. And how have you been able to keep pace with starting small and constantly being able to really kind of evolve yourself as a leader to the point where you can lead a company of this mass and size along that whole trajectory? Like, what has been the key to you keeping expanding yourself so that you can keep pace with the growth professionally?
Well, I never get comfortable. Constantly learning and anything I build it to last.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you give me $5,000, I will ensure that I invest it in a way that whatever I build will last. It will last $15,000. The infrastructure you see today, it's the same infrastructure you saw when you first met me 15, 16 years ago. Yeah, it has scaled up. Yeah, there are probably 300-400 more servers. Maybe they're in the cloud now. But the point is the infrastructure is still the same, right? But it was built with such a solid foundation that we could attach and grow. And I always forecast growth. Even though we're a company of roughly 20 years ago, I knew it would be 1,000 one day. I knew it would be 20,000 another day. And I make sure every decision I make, right, caters to that. I'm always thinking 10, 15, 20 years ahead. I adopted cloud first. I mean, not first, but I was very open to cloud.
You were first, one of the first to cloud.
Yeah, because I felt that was where I could grow to the nth degree without concern about expanding my data centers. The cloud allows me to be as elastic as possible. And all you need to do is get more bandwidth, turn up the pipes, and you have unlimited cloud access. Those are one of the things I've done to ensure that I am ahead of the growth of this company.
So on the technology side, I totally understand that part. And on the professional side, there's different demands from a leader as you scale an organization, from decision making and people and staff. And where have you received guidance, or has it been completely internally driven, of what's needed to manage a company that's growing from the IT perspective?
I do a lot of self-learning. I attend a lot of conferences. I attend unusual conferences, not necessarily related to technology, a lot on leadership, different industries. I am always learning. I cannot pinpoint one person that said,
sure,
this is what you need to do to accommodate growth. I observe others. I Martin Rothblatt, who is the CEO of this company, I've watched her grow this company. I see her style, which I emulate very, very closely. So in that sense, she's my mentor.
Mentor, sure.
Yeah. So I had an earlier mentor whom you met.
Yes.
About 12 years ago.
You have to tell that story. That's a good one.
That was David Stang. He was
David
my first
Stang,
mentor.
right,
Yeah.
right.
I worked for him for a couple of years.
One of the first anti-malware products.
Correct. We did some work together in, say, 89. And then he broke away and started his own company. He started an antivirus, anti-spyware company called Pest Patrol, which he turned around and sold to, I believe, CA.
Yeah, I think you're right. Right.
Yeah, and retired. I learned so much from David. He had such strong work ethic, very smart. He was a prolific writer.
A writer, okay.
Yes, and he taught himself to program. He wrote the software himself. I remember when he called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, Shola, I need you to come build systems in my basement." And we started off in his basement till the servers became too many. Then we had to move to his attic. And in his attic, he had, it was an aviary. He had birds. So here we're working in the attic with about a dozen birds flying around us. We had like 20 servers. And the room had to be at a certain temperature so the birds could be comfortable. And you're sitting there all day, birds crapping on you, you're rebooting servers. It was fantastic. And Dave is the loveliest guy ever. We'll be sitting down there, shooting the breeze, birds flying around the place, and we're creating software.
Amazing.
It was the greatest experience. That was a true startup company. That was the true experience of a startup company, a one-man company.
You never realized, and he sold it for $40 million, right, to CA. I mean,
I don't remember how much he sold it for, but I mean,
that was quite an experience.
It was.
So there's a great story that you've shared with me. How it's funny how your mentors have played a role from me being the observer. You were in this beautiful building here that United Therapeutics has built in downtown Silver Spring. But across the street, there's, I don't know if you'd call it a lab or a production facility for the lung tissues. And maybe you can explain what that was built for and your role and what you had to put together to make that come about.
Okay. So as some of you might realize, there are roughly 200,000 patients waiting for lung transplants every year. Roughly 2,000 of them actually get successful lung transplanted.
So 200,000 out of how many that are looking for it?
2,000.
2,000.
Out of 200,000.
Out of 200,000.
Actually get lungs.
Okay.
That match and are successfully transplanted.
Whoa.
Because remember, you're taking organs out of person A, you're putting them in person B. Person B's body is going to naturally try to reject those lungs. Okay? No matter how close these two people are. So we heard of a group of doctors in Toronto General that had devised a way of processing lungs prior to transplanting them. And what they did was they used special chemicals to perfuse those lungs, basically to flush out anything that may trigger a rejection.
Okay.
All right. And they did this like probably one every couple of months and all that. We heard about them. And since United Therapeutics is at the forefront of lung research, it piqued our interest. We spoke to them, we partnered with them, and very casually, the CEO said, Shola, is there a way we could automate this? Where we could have electronic medical records for each set of lungs that are perfused, so we can actually track them, find out the genealogy and all that. And my reaction was yes, because I never said no to her. She challenges me, and really the sky is not the limit with her. There's no limit here. I said, sure, we can do it. And we did. So we went to Toronto General, my engineers and I. We observed how this was done on pigs. We observed the entire process of removing lungs from one set, from a pig to another. We observed everything. We observed all the machines that did the work.
Okay.
Then we went and spoke to vendors and asked, do you have software that could do this? They're like, no. Nobody ever done this before. And nobody had ever connected so many devices to work like that before. So we had to speak to medical device companies to find out which of those devices lent themselves to being IoT. So my goal basically was figure out all the devices that are used to manage these lungs, to perfuse these lungs.
Sure.
To get the IoT versions of those devices.
Internet of Things version?
Internet of Things, meaning they all have the IP addressable.
Gotcha. All right. Yep. Gotcha.
So that way, as they were perfusing the lungs, they were collecting data or recording data that I was streaming to an electronic medical records system we had built in the cloud.
Oh, okay.
All this was new to us. None of us have.
This is this is uncharted.
Uncharted, totally new. And we built this proof of concept. I just hired a developer. He'd never done this in his life. Never. And he was just a .NET programmer. He'd never done any cloud work. And so, well, he has to stream to the cloud every piece of data so we can track every set of lungs that are perfused. So we built a proof of concept. It worked. We bought the machines and we built the building. So today we have a state-of-the-art, the only kind in the whole world, with 6 operating theaters where 6 sets of lungs can be perfused simultaneously over a period of 6 to 8 hours.
My goodness.
And all that can be done electronically. All the data streamed securely into the cloud.
So this has a huge benefit for people. Obviously, now you're essentially commercializing its ability to flush a lung that gets sent to you. So the lung is shipped to you, correct? And then you're using the word perfuse. I look at almost like draining the radiator of a car. You're cleaning the radiator out and then sending it back out, right?
Pretty much. The technical term is profusion.
Profusion, okay.
But yeah, pretty much that's what it is. I mean, we're flushing. And what that does for the pair of lungs is it makes it more viable for a successful transplant.
Well, my father just went through a heart transplant, so that world is fresh. It was just last year. So yes, Putting an organ in someone's body is a big deal. So I'm just very, very fascinated your ability and your willingness to jump on a very transformational project like that and tackle it and then turn it around into something that's now a revenue generating source for the organization. And I think that's a unique ability that you've developed. There's the ability to handle the raw infrastructure piece. I've watched you in action with the architecture and design, and I know that that's something that is near and dear to you from an architecture point of view, but then you're also in all the plumbing support needed for that. But then you're also able to jump into transformation as well. Is that because she pushes you in that direction, or is it because you've said, no, this is where I want to play. I want to play offense and defense?
Well, I mean, I look at myself as a solution provider.
Okay.
I look at whatever I produce as a product. In fact, that is how I build myself today. I create products. If my solution can help this company generate revenue, then my solution is a product. We're no longer called IT. We're called the Business Systems Group.
I saw that, yes.
And just recently, we have, a new name, which we use to prefix all the products this group delivers. So if you can think of, say, workshops, podcasts, maybe TED Talks, well, we call those Nexus Works.
Nexus Works, okay.
Nexus Talks.
Okay.
Things of that nature. So I consider myself, that is what I do. I produce things. So if she needed a solution to automate perfusion, my job was to make a product that could do it.
Yep.
And that is how I build myself. Yeah, the plumbing is important. The IT plumbing, the infrastructure is important. If that was not solid and secure, there's no way
you could do that.
I'd have this opportunity.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad I work for a CEO that trusts me and is always pushing the edge of science, and there are no limitations when it comes to her.
Well, I think it's inspiring for the people listening, and regardless of what position you're in within an organization, is to make that, certainly the right circumstances have to align themselves with someone to trust you to take that on. But I think you built that trust through constantly delivering on the stuff that was necessary and then seizing those opportunities as they presented themselves. It's remarkable that you're taking on branding and promotion and renaming your department. You've got to tell the story about your help desk and where it started, because you're part of a West Coast group, an innovation West Coast group. And I know I said, we've got to have this on the East Coast as well. But it was funny, you took on help desk. Can you explain what you did with help desk? Because I think that's really interesting for people listening.
Okay, so because I was the first IT department 17 years ago here, I've seen the help desk evolve over time. And folks kind of associate the word help desk with things don't work. And I said, no, that's not what help desk is. Help desk is a product, right? To make your life easier, right? It's not about fixing broken iPhones and broken laptops and all that. I said, you know what? What if we rebranded ourselves? And not just, rebranding is one thing, but you also have to deliver, right? So I said, you know what? We're going to create something similar to the Genius Bar, the Apple Genius Bar. All right. And I hired a company to help with our branding strategy. And we worked very closely for a few months, and we came up with a new name for my help desk. We call it the Nexus team, NEXS. It means a whole bunch of technical words, network, But I tell you one thing, just yesterday, one of my staff members just said, you know what? Let's just say it's called New and Exciting Stuff. So that's what we call ourselves now, New and Exciting Stuff.
Okay.
And Nexus. So we opened our Genius Bar. It was just proof of concept, a couple of hours every day in the cafeteria. And we set up toys, we set up gizmos, gadgets, drones, robots, and all that. And people stopped by, they hung out with us. They eventually began to know who we were. Because, in IT, nobody really knows who you are.
Right.
We made sure everybody had turns managing the Nexus, the Genius Bar. So that way, that gave the IT people exposure to the business people exposure to the IT people that are usually behind the scenes making things happen. So it worked in both ways. And we did this for about 11, 12 months. And it was so successful that my boss approved budget monies to build 2 permanent Nexus bars, one in North Carolina and one in Silver Spring. We're going to launch the first one next week. We're going to launch the second one in 2 weeks' time. And we are moving the IT away from things. These are products that we deliver.
So people can bring anything to you is basically what you're saying. It's just like the Genius Bar. Bring me your broken iPhone, whatever, and we're going to take a swing at fixing it.
Exactly. We'll guide you if we can't solve the problem. Folks have problems with their home computers, their kids' computers. They bring it up to us in conversation. We provide guidance on how it can be solved if we can. We don't have all the answers, but we'll certainly ensure that the person leaves satisfied.
Well, I know we have to wrap up this conversation because you have to get onto a meeting, but this is hopefully the first of a couple rounds we can do together. to really inspire our listeners to look at things differently, have a different perspective. And as we wrap up, is there anything that you think is important for the leaders listening to this for you to share, or some guiding wisdom as we wrap up today?
Well, my advice to leaders is do not be a rock. Be a learner. Always learn. Be always open-minded to learn. There's so much to learn. And during the path of your learning, your leadership increases, it improves. You could help people even more. I will never stop learning. My father died a few months ago at 94, and the man never stopped learning. I saw him hunt and peck on a computer once. It was ridiculous. He moved the mouse all the way to the edge of the screen, and he was stuck for hours. He didn't know that all he needed to do was physically pick up the mouse, bring it back home, and then, control the pointer again. He thought he had lost the mouse. It was
That's great.
There's so many things we take for granted, right?
Yes, yes.
You should have seen that man stuck. And I did not know he was stuck until he finally said, you know what, Shola? Help me. The mouse has disappeared. I said, Dad, no, just pick it up and then bring it back.
Well, this is great, Shola. I appreciate you for your time today. And it's been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay. We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers. All right.
Well, that's a wrap for my conversation with Shola. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with him. I was super excited to meet with Shola, as I've known him for many years, and I wanted to bring his knowledge and wisdom to you. If you like this episode, or if you just want to give me some feedback on people that I need to be meeting with, use my cell phone, 410-320-6433, 410-320-6433. Let me know your thoughts. Also, you can find me on Twitter at EXOITleader, at EXOITleader. Share with me your thoughts, opinions, and let's engage in conversation. Until next time, have a great day. So there you have it. This wraps another episode of Bill Murphy's Red Zone podcast. To get all the relevant show notes, please go to our blog at www.redzonetech.net/podcast. Additionally, make sure you go to iTunes and leave your comments in iTunes about the show. This helps our show rankings enormously, and it helps support the show. Until next time, I appreciate you very much for listening. Thank you.